So with this video, I wanted to address two things. One, how much work goes on before you see a finished project or renovation, for those who don't have experience with it. And also, why it is the old joke, when the contractor gives you his estimate on time and cost, it ends up going way over every time. You can't count on it. So bear in mind that this project was just meant to be a bathroom floor, nothing else. That's all we wanted to do was replace the cracking linoleum and be done. I knew there were some problems with the subfloor. I thought that they were because they had not properly leveled where they'd done some repairs in the past. So I expected to have to do some leveling. What I found instead was this. When I opened up this floor, removed the bad linoleum, removed the bad subfloor, I found that there were no nail. Well, this had a nailer, but it was almost it was like a half-inch nailer, so not useful. No nailer here, no nailer here, and this was not here. This was not here, including these. This was not here. This was not here, and this was not here. And what I found above all was that when the staircase that used to be in this space was removed, they, of course, put in new joists, but when they put in plumbing later, the plumber cut right through the joist. So that's a joist right under the heaviest object in the house, which is this cast iron tub, and it's just been floating. So now, not only do I need to get some support in the framing for the subfloor so that the subfloor stops flexing, which is what was actually cracking the linoleum, I have to do something about this. So I started with what I knew I needed to fix. The first thing was I needed bracing in here, so I put in my nailers, and they're good, so that's in good shape. I put in this cross brace because I thought more support better. To run that though, and to run any of this, I had to reroute the hot and cold water feeds. To do that plumbing, I had a couple constraints. This is before stimulus checks came in, so money was really tight. I had to recycle every fitting that I could, which meant sitting here getting it hot and then brushing it without somehow mangling it with the pliers. I also had to put in shut-off valves to the upstairs hot and cold water feeds because otherwise the whole house would have had to have been shut off. Remember, this house is more than 100 years old. So I put in those there. I put in these valves here, and then I went ahead and rerouted things. Fortunately, modern tubing, PEX tubing flexes, but it still has limits. And so I had to pour sand in this piece and cap it, and then use the heat gun to bend it to the shape I wanted. Sand keeps it from deforming. This one I had to do in place and just hold my tongue and hope I didn't mangle it because there was no way to put it in and then pull it back out. But I got all that done. So the other thing I had to do was put an extender on this because otherwise the valve would have been down here in the floor, and that's no good. So I got that done. Then I could work on the framing. So I put this in. That was, obviously. And then I put in this because it runs under and gives me support back here. And it was a hassle. I had to yank it with the crowbar. I had to slide it back there and then yank it in and hammer it down. Got that in. I put a cleat down underneath to make sure that I didn't have any seesawing action. And then I had to deal with these issues. Now, one of the first things I did was put in these side braces to keep the joist from moving from side to side. But of course, that's not vertical support. But it did give me something to work with this on, and so I put in a side cleat and was able to nail this in place. I built this as a single piece and then anchored it with double-pointed nails just to hold it in place while I was working on it from underneath because I knew I needed some vertical support. Double-pointed nails, by the way, are great, and I recommend to every handyman that they get a few. Get yourself any kind of hollow tube with a flared end and you've got yourself something to nail them with and not mar them. But they have their limitations. They're not really structural. It just kind of held it for me. It makes it a little stronger. I put this piece in, and I got artistic about it and kind of curved that there. This is nothing but vertical support for the subfloor. It does nothing structural for the house. But this 4x4 does somewhat brace. It braces more on the bottom because they didn't fully cut the joist, but it braces here and just helps tie the structure together. Then I had to support this from underneath, and I wanted more support on this as well. And so I had to go into the downstairs work. So bear in mind, I've already had to go down to the cellar and put in valves just to do my basement, my bathroom floor. And I've already had to do all this plumbing, which is done. Great. The last plumbing thing was to put insulators on these pipes. This was tubing, copper tubing, and it was rubbing. So I had to protect that from rubbing. And I had to redesign how these hot and cold feeds ran to the sink. So I had to redo that because originally, remember, they ran over from this direction. So now to support this, which by the way, if I do say so myself, takes my weight quite well, I had to run downstairs. Now bear in mind, this house is more than 100 years old, and what you see here is a project that we already had going on because they did something odd. They walled off this entire section of the floor and kind of had it curved up here. You can see the original wooden flooring versus the subfloor. I don't know why they did it this way. We knew we had work to do. There was kind of a funky piece of sheetrock in here. This renovation was originally done when they were still using sheetrock nails. And the stuff that they were working over was plaster and lath. So I knew I needed a nailer up there, which you see now. But before I could put the nailer in, I had to do some other things. I could see that this wall was not prepared for anything structural. And so I had to do some work on that. I know that this was once a staircase, in part because this is open and this was not. In fact, I had plaster and lath in a gap that went all the way down on the side. So I had to tear all that. That's all that's left. I had to use a special, get a 4x4 to make sure I had full support here. Put in extra studs and things. And while I was working, I found that there was a little bit of dry rot. Dry, but I still needed to have something solid, so I had to put in that piece there to support it. But before I could frame all of this wall in, I had to take care of this insulating project. You see the pink back there. This part of the wall was not insulated. And I think it's because they'd walled it off, and then they blew in vermiculite insulation the rest of downstairs, which is a different story. I had to get this piece in, because even though it's not structural, it's just for when we frame off the utilities here. And before anyone says anything, there will be a door. It'll be hinged so that people can access them. But I needed to frame it, and I knew that once I did this, I wouldn't be able to get anything nailed to that. And so I had to get that in, which meant I had to do the insulation before any of it. I got that done. I went ahead and got this done. This was work. I had to rip out what they had down here and build it up high. Pandemic budget, so I had to. There were some cracks down there I didn't like, but I couldn't cut my board any shorter, so I made sure to reinforce that. This was not structural at all, so I couldn't even just turn stuff sideways, and obviously it didn't go to the floor. What they did was take these boards up to the edge of the original plaster and lath. So imagine taking your 2x4 up to here, and then throwing a sheetrock over it. So it just wasn't functional there. So I got it done. There's still work I'm going to have to do to finish the kitchen, but I'm at a point where I could stop with the bathroom project. So that led me to finally bracing my joists from underneath. So I braced this one that had the vertical cleat, and I was happy with that. That's a good angle, nice solid, that's not going anywhere. I got the other one. This is the one that had the double pointed nails, so that's good. And then I had to support that joist that they'd hacked. So I did this. The problem is it has too much too much lean in it. It's too far this way and not more like this, like it should be. And so I needed to come up with some extra support, and that's when I came up with the strapping. The strapping I had to get hot to bend, so get the blowtorch out and bolt it all in. That was after, of course, we put this nailer in, and to put this nailer in, since it's also going to serve as part of the framing for the sheetrock, the drywall, I had to stabilize this corner. Remember, this was their strange renovation, which meant that I had to get the floor jack out and push this up and kind of hold it in place so that I could work on it and get it level. I had to put this nailer in and tear out what they had here because it was up against basically the plaster and lath. So now it's 2, and that's solid, not going anywhere. But this I can't rely on as structure for the vertical, which is why I had to do it this way, because this is a dropped ceiling. If you can see from some renovation in the middle, there's the original floor space corresponding to this over here. And then they decided they wanted a lower ceiling, maybe for heating costs, I don't know, but this is what they did. So I can't rest anything on this. It's tempting, but it's not safe. So I had to do it this way. Now that that is done, I can go on with the project. And that now brings me to where I am, which is putting in the planking. And I am using planking because I have pressure treated planking and it's a bathroom. And I've seen too many situations with delaminated, water damaged plywood. We're going to use the pressure treated planking. And this stuff, it lasts. It is, however, a little low. And so I'm going to have to use some leftover leveling compound from another project before I can put my underlayment down and finally do my bathroom floor. And so that's just a picture of what can happen when you're dealing with 100 years of bad renovations and why estimates are so unreliable. Because even in a new house, people take shortcuts, and the new builder comes in, and if he's ethical and responsible, he is not going to want to just cover up the old mess and let it be somebody else's problem, because he's not going to want somebody to do that to him. And so do be patient. Obviously you want to find somebody with good reputation, but you don't want to be the homeowner that finds this mess. You don't want to be the homeowner that left this mess to other people. This is bad. This is irresponsible. Even though I measured these joists and ripped them to exactly the right width, I'm still having to shim, as you can see some shimming here, because they didn't support this header and it settled. And in spite of my best efforts, I couldn't get it any better than where I am now. So you just have to play with it. And this should give you a better understanding of all that can go wrong on your projects.